Welcome to topic 9. So this is the introduction to global network design, where we're going to take a look at our supply chain and see if it's worth expanding outside of our own country. So we're going to move right into it. So we have this quote here, open the window and look outside. It's a big world out there. So if we look out the window, well, let's say that window is on a house and that house is known as the United States. Well, we're looking outside, so we're looking at Canada, Mexico, a couple oceans. Well, what's beyond that? It's so big out there. There's so much more than just what's on that, what we can see to the horizon. So when we do this, we want to look at everywhere. There's a lot of possibilities in the world out there for us. So using Apple as an example, they make a lot of electronics, right? And chances are you might have used one of their products, iPhone, the iMac, any of the other ones, right? So when we're looking at that, where did that come from? Well, chances are it came from China, which has 6 manufacturing plants for Apple, or it might have came from Brazil. There's 1 manufacturing plant in Brazil, or it might have came from other areas, depending on what the product was. So you can look at this map. China has 349 suppliers in China, where in the United States there's 60. There's, you can see the ones in Europe, some 1s, 3s, 5s. There's a 13 in there. You can take a look and see where these items come from that make that Apple product that you've used. So why do we do this? Well, we're looking at, one, we need to reduce costs. That's always a company's goal, reduce cost, grow profits. So if we can reduce our manufacturing cost, that's going to increase profits, right? That's $1 directly to the bottom line that you're not spending. So that's what supply chain does. That's our goal. So to get the right product to the right place, right time, there's 7 rights. And then, we want to save money and do it well. So moving on here, we have some good, the bad, and the ugly here. So globalization. So global trade, right? So it gives companies access to a diverse set of resources. Now, there's a lot of resources in the world that we don't have here in the United States. Let's say manufacturing, for example. Well, there's not much manufacturing done in the United States anymore. We're more of a consumer society. But if you look at China, for example, that's the manufacturing powerhouse of the world, it seems. If you need it made, some company in China can make it for you. And they have a lot of different resources there. And when we're doing that, it's easing extreme poverty, whether it's China, whether it's Germany, whether it's Ireland, any of these countries that we decide to put a manufacturing plant. The workers there might be going from the equivalent of $1 a day to $20 a day as an annual income. So with that, we're bringing these people out of poverty, and it's enabling the rise of a middle class. Many countries have those that are in poverty and then the real elite rich. There's sometimes not anything in between. So if we can do that with our company, and that's the goal of your company, is to help these areas, this might be a way to start looking at where you're going to put your manufacturing facilities or a headquarters or whatnot, because this will be rising that middle class. People will have disposable income, so they can start spending money on other things that they may want or need. So we do have some bad things though, right? So if we take a look at the iPhone sales to end users from 2015 to 2017, we see the United States had a dip there in 2016. China, it's been decreasing all 3 years. Europe, slightly increasing. Japan has remained roughly steady. And then the rest of the world is increasing. So why do you think China might have decreased? Well, it's probably the same way that the United States likes to buy American products, right? So a lot of people have a national pride. Regardless of your country, you have pride in your country. So in the United States, if you can buy an American product, you might choose to do that. In China, if you saw there was a Chinese-made product, you probably would buy that. So in the rest of the world, same thing. But when we have a flat world where it's not really many barriers to getting to different areas, the rivals will increase because there's a low barrier to entry to these industries. So competition becomes intense. So for example, in China, there's a lot of new and established cell phone manufacturing companies. A lot of brands. So like here you have Samsung, iPhone, Motorola. We have some brands here in the United States that we use, even though Samsung's not a United States brand. However, in China, a lot of people are choosing to buy Chinese brand because of that national pride, just like we do in the United States. So there's Oppo, there's Huawei, there's all these different brands. So if you could buy an iPhone that was made in the United States, would you? Would you be willing to pay between maybe 5 and 13% more, or even twice as much more because it's made in the United States? Globalization has actually decreased prices, so it makes products more affordable. So if you're in a country and you spend $1 on a candy bar, well, if you can get the same candy bar for 50 cents, now you have 50 cents that you can use elsewhere, right? That might be able to go to, I don't know, a soft drink that you can have with that candy bar. I don't know, I'm just using those as an example. So we do have the ugly side of globalization. So while we're trying to cut costs, some companies cut corners, right? Of course, they're trying to cut their costs. So they exploit their workers. So some of these things might be as simple as they don't provide heat, or it's a very minimal heat, or they don't provide air conditioning because it's too costly in the electric bill. Who knows? Or they build a poorly built building, which may have been what happened here with the Rana Plaza collapse. So this was a textile manufacturer that had 1,100 people get killed. So unfortunately, this happened. Now, when they were digging through the rubble, trying to clear the building and get the people out, they came across a lot of well-known brands of textiles in there. Now, I don't know the brands, but let's just use Wrangler jeans as an example. Well, if Wrangler was found in there, some people might go to Wrangler and say, why did you employ this company? But this company was a subcontractor. So they were not actually directly contracted with these clothing lines. So these clothing lines would talk to somebody and contract it to that company, and then that company would find somebody else to make it. So that's what happened here. This was one of those subcontractors that made clothing for multiple clothing lines, clothing manufacturer, clothing brands, I should say. And unfortunately, they were not the original contracts. So a lot of fallout came to these companies whose products were found in here, but they didn't have any control about this company. So we have, going over this, we have the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we have more innovative products under our good category because now we have the capability of maybe a different manufacturing process. We could have better quality because of lower costs, right? So lower overall costs will definitely help sell your product. And improved living standards. So because we have these factories going into these areas with a low cost of labor, well, these people might not have had this type of income before, so we're increasing their living standards. So we're building that middle class. So we had the bad, right? So intense competition. We're going to have more of that. Greater complexity. A global supply chain is a lot more difficult to control than a domestic supply chain. So we have a lot more risk. So we don't know what that country's like. It might be lawless, but then again, it might be the most law-abiding country out there. So that's just one risk. But how about a more variable lead time? Because it's global. So we have to get our products from one part of the world to the other part. How's it going to get there? How long is it going to take? What happens if, a bad storm and it's on the sea? It got put on a ship, and the ship's at sea, and now that ship has to detour, go around the storm. Well, that's probably going to add a few days to your shipment, right? But there's nothing you can do, so that could be another risk. Then we have the ugly side of it, worker exploitation. Of course, companies want to cut corners where they can. That might mean they work their employees longer for a lower wage. And then we have our elevated carbon footprint. So with our carbon footprint, some countries don't have the environmental standards that is ideal in the world. And because of that, they take advantage of it. It's unfortunate, but it happens. They're trying to cut costs. They don't want to spend the money for the equipment to make them less damaging to the environment. So overall, global network design has a lot of things to it. We have this good, bad, and ugly. It's expanding our worldview, and I hope by going through this, we'll be able to show you how globalization and getting a global supply chain is worth it. All right, you have a good one.